on the subject of stealth changes before the patch releases, we have gotten first the stealth change, of course, that for the release of this rather unimpressive 11.0.7 patch, first we got the announcement of the massive discount of gilded crest costs for your crafted items, as well as the massive buff to your crest acquisition from Mythic Plus keys, and then we got the announcement for added balance tuning for the patch, and now, very last minute, we also got the announcement of the supposedly huge buff being given to this ring, together with some also balance tuning / nerfs to Mythic Plus difficulty. Let's go first though over the bigger one, which is the change to the ring. So, Blizzard came up with an announcement pointing out that when 11.0.7 goes live now, basically, the Siren Isle ring Circe's circlet will be significantly stronger. Why? Because instead of starting at item level 619 and being upgraded throughout 6 weeks up to 639, now instead the ring will start at 639 and be upgraded over 6 weeks up to 658. Now, going by the normal logical increase in item level, 658 will be roughly heroic raid level in the next season. So obviously, Blizzard's point is, our goal here is to make the ring a clear choice for the remainder of Season 1, as well as keeping it relevant for Season 2, where it should compete with heroic raid gear and be replaced by drops, in the high, Mythic Plus, mid-track level kind of gear from Season 2. Now, we had, of course, an entire video about it. Now, Blizzard is warning that this may require us to make tuning adjustments to specific gems later, so that we can avoid unintended power spikes. And we may want to buff weaker gems as well. Nonetheless, we are focused on the item level of the ring as our guide, for the performance, to give you the idea that it's that high of an item level because we want it to carry over in Season 2. Now, we had a video about this, pointing out how weak the ring is. In fact, right now, this ring is so weak that even with this buff, even with the ring starting at 639 item level, instead of finishing at this level, and going all the way up to 658, it would still be weaker than your current 639 rings. Look at this. Look at this, you see this? This is your pretty generic early boss ring drop from Nerubar Palace. This ring, in total, don't bother counting yourself, just trust, this ring has 6,523 secondary stats. Now, we pointed out how weak the incoming ring, even at 639 item level, was because when we took all 3 of the secondary stat gems available that you could lock into the ring, you were going to end up with 5,721 secondary stats. So, we are talking about losing out practically 800 secondary stats compared to a normal ring. Even upgrading this new ring up to 658 item level, you would still be a couple hundred secondary stats below a 639 level ring that you have right now from the raid or from Mythic Plus. So it will still be weaker. Up in the item level won't even be enough, not even close, to beat a 629 ring. You would have to actually go and buff the gems again by some 30-40% to even make it comparable. So yeah, we will have to wait further buffs. At least we have gotten the confirmation from Blizzard this is a plan, because they are saying this may require us to further tune the gems if we still find out they are weak. But at least now we have the confirmation. We want this. We want this to be the clear choice getting into Season 2. Now, this is, more or less a positive for most players, because now they have one less item, one less gear slot they have to worry about when upgrading. Also, technically speaking, rings are quite the tough nut to crack, because basically it's the one where you're gonna have the most competition with the rest of your group, because, well, everyone wants a ring. If it's a weapon, you are limited by the weapon type. If it's an armor, you are limited by the armor type. Even if it's a trinket, you are limited by the, main stat on the trinket. But for rings, not really. It's mostly just about the secondary stats on the ring. So being able to get yourself already one good ring getting into Season 2 will be quite the good addition. Even better, of course, assuming this is made strong for specs that focus on mastery, because this ring does have the only gem that's specialized on a single secondary stat is going to be the mastery gem. So if this ring is actually buffed and actually becomes relevant, then it will be a pretty good buff for mastery stacking specs. Now, some players just by default started complaining, now Blizzard wants us to make this thing mandatory because they want us to go into the new patch with this new zone and grind this ring to get players back into the game. No. As we already pointed out, there is no grind attached to this ring. You are getting this ring and the first gem in the first 10 minutes of the patch being open, and after that all you do is one weekly quest per week to get yourself the increase in item level. The only grind required, if you can call it that, is to do the world quest or the weekly quest that rewards you with the gem you want. So once you got your gems, all you do is the weekly quest to increase its item level for 6 weeks from 639 to 658. Also, yes, there is a catch-up mechanism for alts. You will be able to get these item level increases you are supposed to get from weeklies. If you're skipping or ignoring weeklies on alts, they will drop from the zone. They will drop from treasure chests, they will drop from rare mobs. So technically speaking, you might as well just ignore this entire patch for 6 weeks and 5 days before the release of the next season, go into the zone, kill a bunch of rares, get all of your item level upgrades and have your 658 ring before the new season begins. So there is very little grind required to getting this ring up and running. We will see, of course, just exactly how powerful Blizzard intends to balance it. I guess we can say for now it can be somewhat of a buff for late cutting edge progressing guilds, or maybe even pushing players in Mythic Plus still to get a powerful ring if it gets buffed to be powerful, because reminder again, at the moment the ring is quite weak even with the increase in item level. But even then, this talk about weakness of the ring was still aimed at players already decked out in gear. We're talking about this one being weak for characters at 635 plus item level with mid-track gear in most of their slots. This is definitely good, of course, for alts. It's definitely good for characters that have not kept up their gear to be nearly as high this season. They are practically getting a freebie 639 ring even now, even before upgrading it. It's still a pretty good improvement on your character, and we knew this was going to happen. I mean, we were all pretty confused. Why would you be releasing an 11.0.7 patch practically identical to the 10.0 version that released the Onyx Amulet that everyone wanted to get because of how powerful it was, and yet we had practically a similar ring except it was much weaker. So what's even the point on getting into this zone if the power level reward is so whack? So the buff was quite expected. We just have to see now to which degrees of a buff we are going to get. At the moment the ring is terrible. Even after the 20 item level jump, it will still be bad for most of the specs, provided they already have a 636 plus minimum ring at the moment. It is also likely, given how small of the secondary stat buffs you are getting from the ring compared to a normal ring, that it's the effects, it's the procs, it's the free stuff, in this case the free damage, the single target gem damage, the 2 target cleave or the 5 target AoE gems that will be the ones that can actually be strong and powerful compared to the simply secondary stat buffs, especially when, as mentioned, you only have one stat stick of one secondary stat you can choose, which is mastery. The other 2 gems are for all secondary stats or your highest secondary stat. So if you want to stack mastery, you can take the highest secondary plus the mastery gem, but if you want to stack crit, you can take the highest secondary gem 1, but you cannot take a crit only 1. So there is perhaps more value in the proc effects becoming actually powerful over just going for secondary stat stacking on the new ring. We will just have to see how much it will get buffed, but at least it's good that we got the acknowledgement from Blizzard that even in its base version, starting at 619, taking 6 weeks to get to 639, this was all too long. It was all too long for a reward being too weak. On top of that, it made no sense because 6 weeks after this patch, we are basically getting 11.1 released. So great, I'm just finishing getting this ring upgraded to 639, and now the patch comes out and the item level jumps up 30 item levels, and now this ring gets replaced by the first Mythic Plus 4 I am doing. Great. So yeah, it definitely makes sense to have this ring buffed up, and now it's time to see just how much will it get buffed. So this was the announcement for today about the inevitable buffing of this ring, and the PSA required to be attached to this announcement on the fact that, yeah, it's still gonna be quite easy to get this ring, and it's still gonna be quite easy to level up this ring, and it won't really require that much of a slog, that much of a grind to get it powered up before the release of the next season. So for today, on this Tuesday, on the eve of the release of this patch, it is now time to leave each other. We're starting as usual, the goodbyes, by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these pointless things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, it's odd. I see outside, I see it's cold, I feel it's cold, but why I don't feel it myself? Where is the cold right now?